This video is about a very sensitive issue, which is the attack that happened in Jerusalem on Sunday by Sheikh Abu Shkaydam, if I'm pronouncing his name right. He killed one Israeli settler and wounded three. Two of them are Israeli soldiers. The attack happened in East Jerusalem, which means it is a Palestinian territory occupied by Israeli occupation forces. Therefore, according to international law, using violence against the soldiers who are occupying your territory is permissible. This is international law. Now, Abu Shkaydam was first an Islamic cleric, and two, he was a member of the political wing of the Palestinian faction called Hamas. We all know Hamas. However, I was checking his background because I have never heard of him before, to be honest. And when the attack happened, I want to see who is this person, right? And I found out that Abu Shkaydam, he actively participated in the war on Syria in the past decade by mobilizing the Palestinians, or those who follow him or believe in him or believe in his speeches, to rise against the Syrian government or President Assad or the Syrian army, whatever. But what makes him really controversial is that he used sectarian, racist, and very radical language in order to mobilize the Palestinians against Syria. And in other words, he used the literature of the Muslim Brotherhood. I watched a video of him in 2016 and in one of the mosques in Jerusalem. And in 2016, you remember, it was the battle for the liberation of Aleppo. So during this time, he posted a video, or one of his followers were recording him, and it is online. I'm not going to post it because it includes very ugly language, a racist language, a sectarian language that even YouTube could maybe consider it a hate speech. But if you ask me, it is a hate speech. So this Abu Shkaydam believed that the forces who were trying to liberate Aleppo from Al-Qaeda or Al-Nusra, from the child head beheaders like Nuruddin al-Zinki, like the so-called Free Syrian Army, who are now known to the entire international public that they are mercenaries fighting under the flag of Erdogan, whether in Libya, in Syria, and even against the Armenians in Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh. And this language that he was promoting, that look, the Shiites, the Alevis, the Farsis, the Christians are going to conquer Aleppo, which is fighting for the dignity of the Islamic Ummah. But in Arabic, he didn't use the terms Alevi or Shia or Christian. So there are other terminologies that the Islamists use, which is Nusayri, Nasara, or infidels. For him, these people are infidels, and in this literature, if you know anything about the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda literature, you know that it's permissible to murder the infidels according to their understanding of Islam, which is completely different, and it negates with the understanding in Syria about Islam, which is very tolerant, which is very protective of the minorities, especially the Christians, the Alevis, the Shiites, all these groups who are the smaller fraction of the Syrian society, right? Now, I really tried to find differences between his speeches and the literature of Al-Nusra Fund, and I didn't find a difference in his approach in seeing and understanding the conflicts in the Middle East, the geopolitical conflicts. He's perceiving the conflicts from a sectarian, religious, and radical lens, which doesn't suit in any way or shape the national interests of the people in the region. The Islamization of, for example, the Palestinian cause, it doesn't serve the Palestinians, it serves Israel. Israel is able to normalize its presence as a Jewish state when the other side becomes all of them, if the other side or all other sides who are trying to resist the occupation become Islamic or Islamist, right? And especially if they become a takfiri. There is a difference between becoming an Islamic resistance and becoming a takfiri resistance. The Islamic resistance that doesn't exclude the other communities from in the society, for example, in Lebanon or Syria or Palestine, and consider them all as part of a society, equal citizens, that's an Islamic resistance. But when it is a takfiri resistance, that means that this group believes that they own the absolute truth and they have the only right to resist against the occupation. And if or when they liberate a territory, they don't want to share this territory with the others. So there is a big difference between them. This is my opinion, that I am against any sort of takfiri group. I will resist them with my intellectual capacity, and that's what I tried to do yesterday or on Sunday when the attack happened in Jerusalem. But sorry to say, a shitstorm hit me by many activists on social media, because they see things they cannot see beyond their nose, and they see things only with a black and white perspective. And that's not the case. Because ask yourself a question. If Abu Shkaydam or people like his mentality, let's suppose they liberated a territory in Palestine or elsewhere, what kind of state are they going to build with this mentality? With this mentality that is based on hatred and racism and sectarianism. So imagine the Israeli occupation forces withdrew from East Jerusalem or from Jerusalem, and the territory is liberated. Are they going to be, are the people like Shkaydam going to be any better than Israel? We need to ask these questions now, because if you don't, you are doing like the Syrian opposition in 2011 or 2012, still now in 2021. So you ask them, what's your political project or economic project if Assad is gone? They say like, oh, let him go now and then we think about it. No, that's not how political projects are built. That's not how futures are built. You have to have a vision. And when I see what this Abu Shkaydam was preaching, for me, he's everything but a revolutionary. He's radical, he's takfiri. This is the truth. Let's be honest. Let's not hide behind our finger. And people like Abu Shkaydam, they serve Israel. They help Israel for promoting and marketing itself as a state for only Jews, because the other sides are becoming all Islamic or Islamist or takfiri, and therefore they are gaining public opinion because of the Holocaust, of course, that look, these Islamists are trying to exterminate us again. Now, the outrage against me, I'm going to address it in this video. In my opinion, Abu Shkaydam was not a member or a part of the general public. In the contrary, he was one of the people who was shaping the public opinion, right? He was using the mosque, the platform that is given to him, to shape opinions. And imagine what he was doing. Syria was targeted by the United States or the CIA and Israel because of Syria's foreign policy, because Syria was in support of Palestine, because Syria didn't sign on a peace treaty that pushes the Palestinians under the bus. This is the truth. Syria, the United States doesn't have a strategic interest in Syria. They launched the regime change war because Syria presents a threat to Israel, whether directly through the Syrian army or indirectly through the armed factions that Syria used to support. If I'm wrong, please somebody write me in the comments if I'm wrong, right? So if Abu Shkaydam was mobilizing the Palestinians against Syria that was in support of Palestine, then he was a soldier for Israel, whether knowingly or not. If I'm saying anything wrong, guys, please just comment and and let me know. This is the bitter truth that the people cannot see nowadays. Now some people say, okay, he was wrong, but at least the last day of his life, he fought against Israel. No. I mean, there are a few things we have to address here. First, Abu Shkaydam, his role was destructive in Syria, and he never retracted his statements or said, I was wrong. Although he knew that Israel supports these rebels, so-called rebels, that he supported also. These so-called rebels were having cash money from Israel, and at the same time they were receiving medical treatment in the Israeli hospitals, right? 2, he is a radical takfiri even if he committed an operation, he did an operation against Israel. That doesn't change the fact that he is a takfiri. If one day Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, the leader of Al-Nusra Front, does a military operation, let's say, against Israel, that doesn't make him a revolutionary. He is still a takfiri, but he did an operation against Israel. Let's draw the lines between them, guys. And if one day Abu Muhammad al-Jolani or Muhaisni or all these terrorists commit or do an operation against Israel, will this make them heroes? Will this make them innocent again? Are we going to erase all the past? Look, if someone commits a crime and he was never caught and he was walking free, and then he saved someone else's life, that doesn't make things equal, guys. So let's make things clear. And in my opinion, this Abu Shkaydam, when you see what he was preaching, I would get the impression that he killed this one Israeli or tried to kill more of them because they were Jews, not because they were settlers, illegal settlers, or because they were an occupation force. Because his entire understanding of the conflict is sectarian, religious, takfiri. So, of course, we don't know 100%, but this is just my impression. And I don't want someone to kill someone based on their religion. That's so wrong on so many levels. A revolutionary person believes in a cause, in a just cause, believes that this territory should be liberated because there is an occupation, not because the religion of the occupier is A or C or D. These are minor issues, but they're very important. Now, some people are saying that I'm a hypocrite because I'm for the Arabic rapprochement with Syria, and they say, why don't you treat him like you treat, for example, the UAE or Egypt or Saudi Arabia? They want to open a new page with Syria. There is a big difference, actually, and the people, they don't want to address it. They just want to talk about things in a very emotional way without any rationality. I would say there are differences. 1, Hamas, that Abu Shkaydam belonged to was supported by Syria financially, politically, and militarily. A lot of weaponry that Hamas uses still now in Gaza, the source of this weaponry is from Syria. So even the dogs do not bite the hand that feeds them. Am I wrong? But Hamas did. And they have bitten the hand that fed them in the past 2 decades. And Hamas, or the political wing of Hamas that Abu Shkaydam was part of it, never retracted their previous positions and never apologized for aligning themselves with Israel in Syria. They didn't change their position. Until this moment, if you go and follow the social media accounts that belong to Hamas on Facebook, they are spitting on our faces day and night. And they're talking shit about us day and night. And they're supporting these terrorists in Syria day and night. And there was never an official statement from the political bureau of Hamas saying that we apologize for what we did or we want to open a new page with Syria. They want to open a new page with Syria with the mediation of Iran, but without changing their course, and that's not going to happen. And I'm not saying my personal opinion. I'm just explaining to you the Syrian position from what I understand, because I've been following the Syrian case or the Syrian foreign policy at least since the civil war of Lebanon. Of course, I wasn't born back then, but I studied it very well. But the Arabs, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, etc., they weren't supported by Syria. It's not like Syria was supporting them, giving them weapons, political cover, and financial aid. And 2, they stopped their destructive foreign policy in Syria, and they want to open a new page based on that. And foreign policy or relations between a state, it's not like 2 people who had an argument and they fought and then they say, I would never forgive you, etc. No, states deal with each other as peers. And Syria is dealing with them from a victorious position, 1, and 2, because these states who supported the opposition or the rebels in Syria, they stopped their support and they want to open a new page with Syria, which Hamas never, ever did in the past years. In the contrast, until this moment, the political bureau of Hamas, Khalid Mish'al, Ismail Haniyeh, this gang that they're aligned with Qatar, Qardawi, Sheikh al-Qaradawi, and with Erdogan. I mean, just recently when the war erupted a year ago between Armenia and Azerbaijan, Hamas sided with Azerbaijan. Why? Because they're pro-Turkey, pro-Erdogan. Although the Armenians, if you study the history a bit, since 1945 till today, a lot of Armenian fighters went to Palestine to fight alongside the Palestinians, even as groups. But people like Hamas, who belong to the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, they're like scorpions. You cannot put them in your pocket and say, I will use it later against someone. No, they will bite you. So for those people who are cheering and celebrating this Abu Shkaydam, this is my warning for you. You're putting them in your pocket. You think that they killed an Israeli and they're now heroes. But believe me, they will come back and they will bite you again. We learned this lesson the hard way in Syria. And this is what I want to tell you about it. I want to warn you. I've been your host, Kevork Almassian of Syrian Analysis. If you're new, please consider subscribing and hit the like button. It really helps me. And if you want to support Syrian Analysis financially, you can become a patron. The link in the description below. And see you next time.